Hi everyone, I'm Cody, W3AMG with Bridgecom Systems, and in today's live stream we're going to be showing all of you how to update the firmware in both the handheld AnyTone radios and the mobile, the 578 mobile radios. So before we do that, let's go ahead and do some shout outs real quick. So we have Steve, K4ODT, from, let's see, Alabama it looks like. Good morning, Steve. We have Dennis, KEO, KE0LYY from Colorado. Good morning, Dennis. We have a Keith from Tucson, Arizona. Let's see. We have Randall from Tennessee. Good morning, Randall. Don, they're in Michigan. Randolph, good morning from Las Vegas. Let's see. Anthony Mills from California. I believe I saw Ham Radio 2.0 on there. Good to have you here, Ham Radio 2.0. Thanks for stopping by, Jason. And we have Anthony from California. Let's see. Okay. We have a Todd from Todd KD5UYZ. Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and get into the video. So one real quick announcement before we get started. We're actually doing a giveaway right now, the Grand Ham Band giveaway. It's going to be an awesome giveaway going on. We are giving away an AnyTone 578 UV3, the AnyTone 578 UV3 Pro, this radio right here, one of them. We're also giving away the AnyTone 878 UV Plus, so not the brand new one, but the current one, the Skybridge Plus giveaway. We're giving away a Skybridge Plus with it, as well as a supercode plug for both radios and so much more. So one lucky winner, that's one of you guys, will win all of this gear worth over $1,592.94. But you've only got until May 23rd to enter. So don't wait. Click the link down in the description to sign up. So anyway, let's get started with the tutorial. So first, I'm going to do the 578. Now there's a couple reasons you would want to upgrade. These radios, in general, my rule of thumb is if it's still working fine, no need to update. It's not like they were really susceptible to a lot of hacking. So if they're working fine, I really wouldn't recommend you upgrade it. But if there's ever a new feature comes out, or in the case of this 578, there's actually a firmware version on it right now that it is not good. It's known to have bugs and known to not work properly. So we want to upgrade it. So there's a couple different versions that are known to not be good firmwares. And if you have these, I would definitely recommend updating. So for the 578, we know that 1.12 is not a good firmware. So So 578 1.12 is not a good firmware. We want to go ahead and update that. And then for the 878, this radio here, now this is the 878 UV2, so this is not susceptible, but for the traditional 878, 1.22 is not a good firmware. So we are going to go ahead and get started with the process. So first, we want to take our radio, and to do this, you actually want to have the radio on, and then you hold down, we have to put it into firmware update mode. What you will do is hold down the exit and the menu buttons. Now you don't have to have the mic plugged in to do this. Like this. You can hold them down, and then hold down the power button while it turns off. Now that it's turned off, you can release the power button while still holding down the menu and exit buttons, and you'll see that light begins to flash. So now you can let go of all the buttons. So this radio is now in firmware update mode, so now we can actually go ahead and update the firmware. So you'll want to grab your programming cable here, plug that into your computer, just like that, and then we will plug that into the radio. There we go. And now we're going to jump into the computer here and pull up the software. So we do want to find out, I know this radio currently is on the bad firmware version 1.12, but it would be a good idea to check that beforehand, and I can show you how to do that real quick on this radio. It's the same process for both. So if you go to Menu, and then scroll down to Settings. And like I said, it works exactly the same on both of these. And then Device Info, select that, and you can go down and see the firmware version. That right here on this one is 1.22. So we definitely want to upgrade this. So unfortunately, 1.22 no longer exists on the website. Generally, I would recommend you download the CPS for the correct version of firmware, whatever the radio currently has, and then do the update from that. But in this case, it doesn't have that. So I have had no trouble updating from other versions of firmware, like the latest one. So we're going to go ahead and use the latest. So I've already downloaded the firmware in CPS. Now you can obtain these from our support page. So if you go to bridgecomsystems.com and then click on support, you'll be taken to a page where you can download all of these different resources, all of the firmwares for them. So you would just scroll down until you find your particular firmware. So there's 578. You can see the different versions here. So I've downloaded the version 1.13 and gone ahead and installed it on my computer. So we're going to open that up real quick. So now that we have it open, the radio is connected and we can see that light flashing. So we know it's still in the correct mode. What you do from here is really simple. You go to Tool and then go to Firmware Upgrade. And sometimes you will have this weird Windows message. It needs to allow you to make it, needs you to allow it to make changes. So you go ahead and click on that and then click Yes. That seems to happen every time. And then we're greeted with this window. So from here, you would load your firmware update file. So when you downloaded that file that contained the CPS firmware and all the different items, that includes an SPI file, and we're going to find that now. So click Open Update File, and now we will go to wherever we stored our download of the firmware. So I put mine on my desktop. There's the official release of 1.13, which is the one I downloaded, and that's what we're upgrading this to. And then I can see there's all the different files in there. So we want the one with FW. That stands for firmware. And there we go. We can see the SPI file. And so just click on that and then click Open. File open success. So we're good there. And we already know the radio is on COM3 in this computer, but make sure it actually shows something there. And we should be set. Now, you can get all of this ready before you put your radio into that mode. Doesn't really matter. As long as your radio is in this mode before you write to it, you'll be set. So we're going to go ahead and write to the radio now. Say OK. And something I guess I should mention, if we put a firmware up on the website, generally we have checked that beforehand to make sure it's good. So if you get the firmware from us, it should be set for you. You know, there shouldn't be a lot of bugs in it or something like that. And in the case of this firmware, we found that out after the fact that it had some weird issues with different things. So we actually took it down afterwards and let people know that, hey, that we don't really recommend this. So we'll keep you guys up to date on if you need to update, if there's some new firmware that comes out, or if there's a firmware that's known to have some problems, then you might want to stay clear of it. So there we go, just waiting on this to complete here. And this should update it to 1.13. There we go, 100% complete, so write complete. Now we see the radio here. Looks like it is turned off. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on. There we go, it's powering up. Okay, perfect. So now we can go ahead and obviously it works, which is a good sign. So we can click on Menu and then scroll down to Settings and click Menu again and then Device Info, and we'll see if it actually shows up. firmware version 1.13. So perfect. We've successfully upgraded this radio. And this one really did need to be upgraded because it was one of the known to be, have some bugs, one of those firmware versions, the 578 1.212 and 878, that version will be 1.22. So unless you have one of those versions, or unless you have a different reason for wanting to change firmwares, there's really not a good reason to update. But it is good to know, you never know what features may come down the road that you want to be able to update. So at this point, we are done with the 578. Everything works fine there. So let's move on to the 878 radio. Now this will apply to the, any of the 878 series, these little AnyTone handheld radios. In this case, we have the brand new one, the 878 UV2 Plus. Now the version 1.0 firmware appears to work fine. We haven't run into any big issues with it, but there is a newer version of it, so we're going to go ahead and install it. Okay, so we just need the programming cable for this radio, which we have it here. Go ahead and plug that in. Okay, should be set. And for this radio, it's a slightly different process for entering the update mode. So you actually turn the radio off, and then what you do is you hold down the PF1 and the PF3 buttons, which are the button directly below the push to talk, and this colorful button, the color depends on the radio. In this case, it's a green button. We hold both of those down while turning on the power, so it can be a little bit tricky, but it's relatively easy. Then you turn the power on, and then you can see record USB mode. And you can also see this little light up top that lights up. So that is letting us know that it's in the update mode. So we should be set at this point. We'll go ahead and plug in the programming cable, make sure it's plugged in all the way. There we go. And now let's jump back into the computer. So we can get out of all of our 578 CPS here. And I've already downloaded the 878, the only version that's out right now for this CPS and firmware. So we'll just go through the folder real quick. If you open up that folder, you can see the way we downloaded our CPS was here, but then we also have this file with the firmware versions, or version, the SPI file. So we want to open up this CPS. Now, we know this is a 1.0 version, and this is 2.0. It's the only one that's out right now, and it is backwards compatible in this case. Now, I do recommend, if whatever version you have, if they have that CPS, it's a good idea to update from whatever the current version is. But generally, it will not have any problems going, updating an old radio with a new CPS. So let's make sure we see the radio, which it may not show up in the COM port section there with it in this mode. So let's go ahead and go to Tool, and then Firmware and Icon Update. And then from here, open Update File. So it's a little bit different, but basically the same procedure. And then we'll go to our desktop where we saved the file, and in this case, we're going to open up the one for this radio, and then the firmware folder, and then there is that SPI file. So open that. There we go, perfect. Okay, and then at this point, everything looks good. The radio is still in this mode, so we're going to go ahead and say write. Okay, open COM port failed. So it doesn't look like it is seeing the radio. Let's see here. Okay, so we are not seeing the radio here. Let me see. Now, I suppose it is possible we did something wrong on the procedure here. Let me check into this real quick. Okay. And things like this happen, guys, so don't get discouraged. If you have a hiccup, just keep a calm mind. We'll figure out what's going on with it, and we'll get it updated. Okay, perfect. So we're not seeing it in the COM port. So I'm going to try unplugging the radio and then plugging it back in. We'll see if that makes a difference. Sometimes that can. Not seeing anything here. Let's see. So it does not look like it is seeing the radio. We only have this CPS open. I know sometimes it will give you errors if you don't have the current, if you have two different versions of the CPS open. So let's figure out what's going on here. Now, if you're ever curious, if you want to verify you're doing the correct procedure, you can always go to our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, and we have a lot of great tutorial videos that will show you exactly how to do this. So if you just want to verify, go to Bridgecom Systems, just do a search for Bridgecom, and then you can actually search any and all of our videos and find videos. So if you go to the search over here, we can find out, potentially, like, hey, did we do this right? Maybe there's a different way to do it that we didn't realize. So I just want to verify we're following the correct procedure here real quick. Okay. And you can also find these in Bridgecom University. There's actually more videos there, so you're more likely to find it there. But in this case, we're just going to search the YouTube channel. Let's see. So just do a firmware update. And there we go. There's a video here. So let's make sure we did this button procedure correctly and we have it in the right mode. Okay. I'm going to skip through here, see if I can find the part we are looking for. Okay. Okay, so it would appear as though, in this case, the button is flashing red. So let's figure out what we did wrong here. And this is, this is a great opportunity for doing troubleshooting. You think you figured something out and then it doesn't work. Don't get discouraged. There's always a solution, and there's a lot of information out there. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to switch my sound over real quick so I can actually hear what's going on. Let's see, here we go.
Button down.
Okay.
Hit where it hit. Push the blue button down.
So we'll push the top button down like we did.
PTT. Push it in. Or turn it on. And you see how this.
Okay, let's see.
Push it in. Button down. Hit where it hit PTT. Push it in.
Okay, so it would appear as though we actually need to press a different button. So I'm going to try this real quick. We'll see if this works. So I'm going to turn it back off and then hold down the green button, the button on top like we did, and then the push to talk button as opposed to that PF1. We'll see if this makes a difference. Perfect, there we go. So that's how you do it. So I apologize for the confusion there, but these things happen. This is real. This is really what happens, what goes on. If hey, how do you update the firmware? You hear one thing and then find out another. So this is a real good, actually, I'm glad this happened because it gives you the opportunity to see how you solve these problems. So from now that we have this red light flashing, what you want to do is go to Tool, and we'll try this again. Now we'll open our update file, the SPI file. There we go. Perfect. And now we're going to write to the radio. And there we have it. So it's working now. We'll make sure it finishes and we'll double check on it. But yeah, there we go. Perfect. We've got it working.
While we wait, do you have any tips on upgrading firmware for the 868?
Okay, someone asks, just while we're waiting here, we'll do a few questions. Someone asked if I have any tips on upgrading the firmware for the 868. So it's been a while since I've done the firmware on that radio, but from what I recall, the process is almost exactly the same. You put the radio into the firmware update mode, and then you update the firmware. I mean, it really is the same. You download the SPI file. There's not a lot of difference there. There may be, I know some of the older versions, and I forget if they did away with this or not, had a separate updater that would update the firmware for some of those older 868 radios. I believe. But it's really simple. It'll be everything you download, it will have all of the files that you need there we go, to do the update. So hopefully that answers your question. There we go, write complete. So we are set here. We'll do some more questions in a second. Let's see if it turns on and see if we have our updated file. There we go. So we'll go to menu and then, let's see, make sure you can see this. We'll go down to settings and device info. And perfect, we have version 2.01b, which is what we downloaded. So there we go. That is how you do it with the 578 and the 878. So don't get discouraged, guys. That's my number one advice to you. There's been a lot of things, I do this all the time, but then I don't do update my firmware for a while, and then you come back to it and don't remember quite how it works. So it's always a good idea to watch a tutorial before you do the procedure, just so you remember exactly how it works. So do we have any more questions?
Can you update the 578 firmware without losing your code plug?
Someone asked if you can update the 578 firmware without losing your code plug. So you certainly can. In this case, we lost nothing on the 578. Still, everything is there. Now, I would recommend backing up your code plug first. It's always a good idea. I mean, whenever you're messing with new versions of radios or computer systems or really anything, it's a good idea to do a backup first. Because you never know if something could go wrong, the USB cable unplugs mid-update. You never know what will go wrong, and you don't want to lose your information.
My new radio came with 1.22c. Is that okay to use?
Let's see. So someone asked, their radio came with 1.22c. Is that okay to use? I'm assuming that is an 878 radio. In that case, I would actually recommend you upgrade. 1.22 is, I mean, if you're not having trouble with it, I can't tell you it's terrible, but, if it's working fine for you, I suppose you could stick with it. But if you run into any problems, I would upgrade, because we know that is a faulty version of firmware. It does have some bugs.
I just bought a 868 last week. Should I upgrade?
Have someone ask, they just purchased an 868 radio last week and asking if they should upgrade. So the 868, the version, it's been out for a long time now, and the version of firmware it ships with is more than stable. Unless you have some specific reason for upgrading, I wouldn't really recommend it. There's no need to.
Is the latest version of the 878 UV, not the 2, 1.23 correct, not 2.0?
I'm sorry, I think I missed part of that.
Is the latest version of the 878 UV, not the 2, 1.23? Is the firmware 1.23?
Someone's asking if the latest version of the 878 Plus, not the UV2, is 1.23. I believe we can find out real quick. Is that what did we just install here? We can find that out for you real quick. It's really easy to find this information out. So if you go to support on our website and then scroll down to the firmware sections, you'll be able to find out all of that information. Let me see here. We'll double check 878 Plus. Oops, clicked on the wrong link. CPS and firmware. 1.23. You were correct. That's the latest one that we have tested and approved right now. So that was what we would recommend. We've had no trouble with it. Any more questions?
Can you show how to download the options program to change bands on the 878 UV2 Plus?
We have a question. Someone asked if we can show how to download the AT options program to change bands on the 878 Plus or the 578 radio. I can't remember which one. So unfortunately, we can't give out information on that. We don't have information that will show you how to modify the radio. A lot of times that will be illegal to change it to certain bands. These are Part 90 certified radios, so there are certain requirements. If you buy it in a commercial form, it'll have the VFO locked out, and in this case, you won't have 220. And if you buy it in an amateur version, you won't be able to transmit outside of the amateur band. That's how the FCC works, and that's how the legalities are. So unfortunately, we can't help you with that.
Is the TGIF 210 210 Bridgecom Systems an official talk group?
Someone asked if the TGIF 210 is an official Bridgecom talk group. So, I can't tell you for sure. I'm not personally familiar with it, so I'm going to take a guess and say it isn't, but it is possible. I know our tech guys are always up to something, so we can certainly find out for you. Any more questions?
Are there no more bugs in the 578 CPS and firmware version 1.13?
Someone asked if are there no more bugs in the latest version, the 1.13 firmware for the 578? As far as we know, there are not any major bugs in that version of firmware. Excuse me. You never know exactly what's in there. As time rolls along, people tend to find things that were never found before, but at this point, not that we know of. It's real stable.
I think that's everything.
Perfect. So I think that's all the questions we have here. I really appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. I hope you learned something. We had great success right out of the bat with the 578 radio. We ran into a little bit of trouble on the 878, and I'll be sure to update the show notes directly after this so you can have the exact guide without any mistakes in there. And overall, we got everything figured out, a little bit of time and a little bit of research, and we figured out exactly what the problem is. So don't forget to sign up for the Grand Ham Band giveaway. You can win over $1,500 worth of ham radio equipment. So anyway, that's it for now. Please share this video with your friends. If this will stay recorded, it will be up on YouTube. So if you have someone who's having trouble with their radio, have one of those bad firmware, send them this way. So look forward to hearing you on the air. This is W3AMG with Bridgecom Systems 7.3.